The world has changed, and it is completely unacceptable.
Right.
What about the King and the King getting involved in that?
I'm going to have a right go at the King. I'm sick of his wokery. That is ridiculous. We can't call it HMS Agincourt because that will offend the French. Hey, Charlie, we like offending the French. Get with the programme.
I would take a job every day offending the French. Stand by for the legend that is Kev O'Sullivan, Petrie from 10, and Mike Graham back in the morning. But Kev is at the controls from 70344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Drive time tomorrow with Peter Cardwell, who's ill. No, he's not. He's better. See you soon. Take care. Bye.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. I've been waiting. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on the nation's favourite station, Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be in the driving seat steering you through 3 fast-paced hours of news, views and topical debate, all the way to 10 o'clock. You know the drill. Get involved, get it off your chest, get on the phone and call me on 0344 499 1000. Or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I cast iron guarantee I'll play your message out. Can't say fairer than that. It's been a bustlingly busy Wednesday. Here's what's coming up. Welcome to the wonderful world of growth. Rachel from Accounts Style, to the unspoken horror of nutcase net zero secretary Mad Ed Miliband, who pointedly didn't turn up for her speech today. The disastrous Chancellor backs a 3rd runway at Heathrow, which, on the off chance it breaks through the inevitable blizzard of objections and complies with Crazy Ed's stupid carbon budgets, will take eons to ever happen. 10 years minimum. Where's the growth in that right away? Meanwhile, the gormless Granny Freezer's proposal for Europe's answer to Silicon Valley appears to comprise building a short railway line from Oxford to Milton Keynes and improving the road from Buckinghamshire to Cambridge. Stunning. Is this woman out of her depth, or is she out of her depth? 03444991000. Meanwhile, business bosses continue to point out that all chances of growth were snuffed out by Robert Reeves's stultifying £40 billion tax grab budget, especially the 25 billion quid national insurance hike. How can the British economy grow when the socialist government is blood-sucking private sector profits to hand mountains of money to the unproductive public sector? 03444991000. In other news, while he's on manoeuvres eyeing two-tier Keir's precarious job, is West Streeting already struggling in the abyss of ineffectiveness into which all hapless health secretaries disappear? Grim new pictures of the corridor-packed third world horror of A&E indicate that the NHS reforms he so loudly shouts about are one hell of a long way off. Perhaps the ambitious Mr. Streeting should shelve his prime ministerial dreams and concentrate on sorting out our basket case of a health service. Envy of the world, do me a favour. 03444991000. But at least some of the Westminster gang have it all in perspective, getting their priorities right, while the country falls apart at the seams. Listen to this. A parliamentary committee of MPs is in full flight on the important mission to introduce a law banning discrimination against those with afro hair. Who even knew there was such a thing? 03444991000. Plus, after a new poll revealed that the majority of Brits favour a return of the death penalty, especially the younger generation, isn't it about time that our representatives in the Commons listened to the will of the people? 03444991000. Also tonight, Ben Habib joins me in an hour or so to discuss our escalating migrant catastrophe and Starmer's stubborn refusal to even contemplate a cap on the vast numbers of foreigners he's allowing in legally every single year. What's wrong with this guy? 03444991000. And no apologies, I'm going to have a right go at our ludicrously woke king, ordering a name change to the new Navy submarine HMS Agincourt because it might offend the French. Give me a break. Hey, your oh-so-politically correct majesty, we like offending the French. Now it's going to be called HMS Achilles. But Charlie, won't that offend the Greeks? What would your dad think? 03444991000. I'll bring you the latest on the bully dog crisis as police face soaring multi-million-pound kennel and veterinary bills, while the fate of the seized hounds is decided at great length in the courts. It's a right shambles. And finally, former Tory Cabinet Minister Anne Widdecombe joins me to discuss the latest bid to bail out the BBC as more and more fed-up viewers stop paying the TV licence fee and just watch Netflix, Disney and the like. The new idea is to incorporate the streaming services into the 170 quid a year we're forced to pay for the substandard state broadcaster. In other words, you'd have to pay for Netflix, but you'd also have to pay for it in your TV licence. What do you think about that? 03444991000. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Wednesday night together. And we've got a lot to get through today, so without further ado, let's go straight over to my guest for the first hour. Always love a Wednesday, because I am always joined by Talk's excellent international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Hi, Isabel.
Hi, did you have the dubious pleasure of listening to an hour of Rachel Reeves droning on about how determined she is to create growth?
I did my best to be professional, and I dipped into it. But you know, I've read the substance of it, and it's seriously pathetic. It's pathetic. You can't say I'm going to build a little, or we'll build a little railway from Milton Keynes from Oxford to Oxford. You know, I think it's about 30 miles or something. And then also we'll improve the road from Buckinghamshire to Cambridge. And that will add up to Europe's answer to Silicon Valley. Why? How? You know, and then she talks about growth because of the fourth runway at Heathrow. I actually support the idea, but to start talking in terms of that, promoting growth immediately is ridiculous. That will take, if you're lucky, 10 years to happen, even if it does manage to break through the blizzard of objections, mainly from that idiot Ed Miliband, who's already talking about carbon budgets. He didn't turn up for her speech today. He's trying to sort of make small talk and say, oh, you know, we get on well, we're going to work this out. But he's four square against it and will cause a plethora of problems for the Chancellor. This was not a speech for growth. Meanwhile, every business boss in the country is saying, you ruined all chances of growth with that preposterous, grotesque £40 billion tax grab budget last October, in which you hiked national insurance by 25 billion quid. Businesses are having their profits bled away from them. That we can't grow under these circumstances. Who the hell does she think she's trying to kid? I honestly do believe now, Isabel, that she is way out of her depth.
Well, the whole speech was a sign of panic, really. I mean, I was saying on Jeremy's show earlier, I've never known a chancellor give an hour-long speech of the sort that she gave and then take lots of questions afterwards, just a few months after a budget. I mean, effectively, this was like another budget without any of the boring figures in it. And we know she doesn't really like to be troubled by the figures that are clearly all heading in the wrong direction. And let me tell you another reason why this extra Heathrow runway is not ever going to come to anything. Because last time round, Heathrow spent £100 million of private shareholders' money on investigating and putting the case for the third runway, and it all came to nothing. All that investor money was blown. Do you really think they're going to go down the same route again, blowing their own money, pushing the case for this, investigating and setting out how they would do it, when they can see right from the start that half the cabinet and a whole load of Labour backbenchers are against it? And as for whatever government comes after this woeful administration, if it's reform, they won't do the third runway either. So I just can't see this actually being any kind of answer to this country's economic woes. And as you say, the problem is that for all the fine words and a load of blah really that she was giving us today, in the end, she's still taxing everybody to the hilt. She's still making it harder and more expensive to employ people. She's still presiding over uncontrolled immigration. And in fact, worse than that, Kev, I don't know if you picked up on it, the one thing she did say about immigration is she wants more of it, not less of it.
Oh my God. We're going to be talking later in the it's ridiculous.
Still, we've got a horrendously bloated welfare state, and she doesn't sound convincing when she says slightly kind of half-heartedly, yeah, we're going to do something to tackle that. It's not going to work. And I don't know what planet she's on when she thinks that any of this is going to make a difference in a timely fashion.
See, overarchingly, I think what we've got here is a bunch of socialists, sort of sixth form student activist style socialists who surprisingly find themselves in government. For 14 years, they've stewed in opposition, saying, you wait till we get into power and we can exercise our socialist dream. That'll sort the country out. So here they are, they get into power. And they've been deluding themselves that a basic system by which a government, a left-wing government, bleeds the private sector dry, takes all the profits from the private sector and gives it to the public sector, which is entirely unproductive. They thought that was going to work. That is economic madness. It's insanity. It cannot work. And in so many other areas, this government is just ploughing down this socialist route and learning what historians have known for centuries now. Socialism does not work. But until it dawns on Keir and the gang that perhaps they better mend their ways, we're stuck with this sort of ideological lunacy.
I know, and this is such a depressing thing, isn't it? I think that help is coming, but the problem is that help can't come for another 4 years. It is sort of so weird to get your head around the fact that it's only 7 or 8 months ago that the country actually voted, and they voted not in their majority, but unfortunately more people voted for Labour than for the other parties. And here we are, and we're stuck with it, and things are going to get an awful lot worse before they get better. I mean, put really simply, you're not going to get a thriving economy in which you simply give a lot of people a lot of handouts, because if people are just given stuff, they don't work. This isn't complicated, is it? If you just dish out vast scales of benefits and subsidies and so on, people aren't going to have to try very hard. That's putting it in the simplest possible terms. And I'm saying this sitting here in the Middle East, in a country that has no safety net. Now, people will argue about whether that's a good thing or not a good thing, and many will feel that a civilized, advanced economy like the UK should have a safety net for everybody that seriously needs it, the disabled and so on. But countries that are quite tight on their handouts tend to be countries where people have to find a way to make their own living. And that's what they do. They hustle and bustle, and they get up early and they go to bed late, and they actually make something of their lives rather than relying on handouts.
Here's the other good thing, Isabel. Just when we were worried about the future of the economy and the financial future of the country and millions of people who live in it, they're going to, and I think I got the champagne out, they're going to improve Old Trafford, Manchester United's football ground. So that should sort everything out. Just before we go to break, we better have a dip into Rachel from Accounts' speech. Here's a bit of it.
The last full-length runway in Britain was built in the 1940s. No progress in 80 years. Around 3/4 of all long-haul flights in the UK go from Heathrow. Over 60% of UK air freight comes through Heathrow. And about 15 million business travellers used Heathrow in 2023. According to the most recent study from Frontier Economics, a third runway could increase potential GDP by 0.43% by 2050. I have always been clear that a third runway at Heathrow would unlock further growth, boost investment, increase exports, and make the UK more open and more connected. So I can confirm today that this government supports a third runway at Heathrow and is inviting proposals to be brought forward by the summer. Low growth is not our destiny. But growth will not come without a fight, without a government willing to take the right decisions now to change our country's future for the better. That's what our plan for change is all about. That is what drives me as Chancellor.
Well, Isabel, just before we go to break, I would point out that if Rachel from Accounts wants to appear, slightly more professional, perhaps next time she makes a keynote speech, don't make it in the middle of a machine. What was that racket going on? They're so amateurish, this lot, aren't they?
Oh, honestly, I'm trying not to get too depressed here listening to that. It's just all so illiterate, really, banging on about how they're determined to do this and have a fight and so on. It's all going to happen with a battle. And at the same time, making it so much more expensive for anyone who actually wants to create wealth for the country. It's completely topsy-turvy, this stuff. They give with one hand and take with the other.
And realising the catastrophic error of their early days when they came in and talked the country down, talked the economy down, said, oh, it's all terrible, terrible, terrible. We've got Keir Starmer now trying to evoke the memory of Margaret Thatcher's positivism, and we've got the Chancellor, Rachel from Accounts, saying we ought to be like Trump and talk the country up. So they are admitting that they made a massive mistake. Everything they're doing now, as you implied earlier, you alluded to earlier, is a tacit admission that they've got it all wrong so far, and frankly, there isn't much room for improvement with this lot. We better go to break now, and when we come back, we're going to discuss with a friend of ours the all-important issue of Afro hair. That is what MPs have been discussing today and yesterday. Parliamentary time on discussing a potential law to stop discrimination against those with Afro hair. That was what the priority has been for the last couple of days. The country falling apart at the seams, but we might bring in a law to help people with Afro hair. I don't know. I don't know. That next. Stay tuned.
The whole speech seems to be a complete acceptance that they've got it wrong so far, and all that doom and gloom we heard from July, August, September, all those emergency press conferences and speeches and clips to cameras basically saying the country's going down the Swanee, and now we've got this new Chancellor, you know, it's like, who's the new girl? Like, suddenly she's like, everything's great, Britain's brilliant, we can do this, we can do that, we can do that, which I think is a sort of tacit acceptance, I mean, not even that tacit, a pretty clear acceptance that, you know, they've almost talked the country into a recession.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, listen, we're going to talk about, World Afro Day apparently was on September the 10th last year, so that'll come up again, I guess, September the 10th this year. But last couple of days, a committee of MPs have been sitting to discuss. They're on a mission to introduce a law to ban discrimination against those with Afro hair. I didn't even know there was such a thing. And it just strikes me that with the country falling apart at the seams, and the world in such a precarious, dangerous state, that our representatives in the House of Commons, haven't they got anything better to do, anything more important to do? But I may be wrong, and I'm going to introduce someone now who was a witness at the committee and spoke to the committee. She's Barrister Paula Roan Adrian. Welcome to the show, Paula.
Good evening, Kevin. So good to see you.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Paula. I know you testified at this committee, and Isabel and I didn't even know there was discrimination against people with afro hair, and if there is, I think that's awful. But do you really think this is all that important, that the MPs should be spending their time discussing this while the country falls apart at the seams?
So, in short, yes. But let me take you back.
I knew you'd say that.
I need to correct you. So World Afro Hair Day is the 15th of September and it's celebrated around the world. It's an international day, recognised, Isabel will be very pleased to hear, by the UN. And it is the founder, Michelle de Leon, who created this amazing day to celebrate Afro hair because, of course...
All for that.
Yeah, because of course, Kevin, hair discrimination is real. It is a thing.
Is it?
And absolutely. And you'll be pleased to hear that you weren't the only person who had not understood that hair discrimination was a thing. And so myself...
I didn't know. It wasn't a question of not understanding. I didn't know it was such a thing. I understand what it means.
Yeah.
So tell us, Paula, before we sort of debate whether or not MPs should be doing this, what is afro hair discrimination?
So afro hair discrimination is when you are in the workplace and your natural hair is inhibiting you in terms of being able to take on a job or being able to engage in employment in the way that you would have expected to be able to do.
How though, Paula? How would a hairstyle affect your ability to do a job?
Yeah, let me give you a great example. So it impacts on your ability to do a job because you are told that by wearing your hair naturally, you will not be seen as being professional. So in my own experience, I was told that I wasn't to wear my hair in braids as a barrister, that I wasn't to wear my hair naturally because that wasn't considered to be professional, that I wouldn't receive instructions from clients. And in fact, it would put clients off because it just didn't fit the picture of what was expected of a barrister. So, for that reason, and this is me being specifically told that, Kevin, so it was nothing to do with my capability, it was nothing to do with my capacity, it was about my hair. And we see that, unfortunately, across the spectrum of our workplaces, teachers, people in the corporate industry, but we also see it in relation to children and children attending school. And you'll be familiar with the stories, won't you, Kevin, of children who have turned up to school with dreadlocks, for example, or children who have turned up to school with hair in braids. Yes.
So it's not just the afro hair. It's, so we say, black hairstyles.
Yes.
Generally, yes?
Exactly. Texturised hair in its natural format, in its natural state. So we're not going to confuse this, for example, with, well, hang on a minute, my child went to school with purple hair or with a new kind of hairstyle. Yeah. No, we're talking about the natural state of a person's hair.
Okay. Well, look, Isabel, you get involved. I don't like the idea of discriminating against people for their hairstyles in any circumstance. But again, Isabel, you get involved. But I still feel that perhaps there are more important things for MPs to be dealing with right now than this. Your thoughts, Isabel?
Well, hi, Paula. It's good to see you. A little bird told me that you were in Parliament yesterday for this purpose, and I initially thought that it was an actual joke. Are you serious, or are you just winding me up? Is this just?
I actually told this little bird that you were going to love it, and that I thought that you would have wanted to be there, Isabel, to support me. That's what I actually told this little bird.
Well, that's one way of putting it. I love the entertainment value of it. And of course, like Kevin, I don't want to see any kids, getting a hard time at school because of the way their hair is. Whatever, whether they're ginger or whether they've got any other type of funny hair, whatever. Not all of us are blessed with wonderful. I don't know what kind of hair we're all supposed to have, but anyway, no one wants to see discrimination.
We know what kind of hair we're supposed to have because the research tells us. So the research tells us that having straight hair, Isabel, is the most desired professional look across the board in relation to industries. So we actually do know what type of hair we are told we should have.
Okay. But two things here. What about no hair discrimination? I mean, is this in the proposals? I mean, baldies get a pretty hard time. I'm sure an awful lot of assumptions are made about people who have no hair, whether that they're seen to be past it or, less masculine or whatever it may be. And secondly, I listened respectfully to your description of what happened to you and how you were told, you shouldn't have your hair in a certain way or whatever. And I thought, yeah, but you totally got over it. I mean, all of us in our professional lives have some conversations or interactions that are a bit suboptimal, that we remember as being a bit hurtful or whatever. But come on, you're a big hitting lawyer. You've made it despite that hurtful experience. And, surely part of the qualification for getting on in life is being robust enough to deal with the odd little setback or an unpleasant comment or so on and so forth. We need to be a little...
Also, Paula, your hair looks lovely and completely professional to me. Let me ask you this. Look, we're not arguing with you about whether or not there should be discrimination against people with afro hair. We're all against that. That's a bad thing. I think what Isabel and I, what I'd like to ask you right away, you'll get the gist of my problem with this. How many MPs were on this committee?
So in the room, we had 4 MPs and 1 member of the House of Lords. But can I say, to come back to that initial question that you asked about how important it is and whether our MPs should be spending their time doing this. I'm very pleased to hear that whenever the bell rang for voting, they got up and left. Yeah. So, they were in and out of the room, but they were able to give us time, respectfully give us time. I mean, look, Isabel, of course you make some good points about resilience, about being robust, about coming up against a manager or senior member of your work environment who wants to put you down. But that's not what I'm referencing here. I am being told that I have to change my natural appearance in order to get a job. And that is discrimination at its very rawest. The fact that it's okay to say to a person of colour, you will not receive instructions, or the fact that you can say to a child of colour, you must sit in isolation until you take your braids out. I mean, that is discrimination. We're not talking about somebody just being mean.
Yeah, well, listen, Paula, I mean, we're going to agree to disagree on whether or not MPs should spend their time on such matters, but we're not against your cause at all. I will point out one thing. I'm haunted by the memory once of going to see a movie. It was a long time ago. It was The Deer Hunter, and in those days, we're talking about late 70s or something like that. In those days, it starred Robert De Niro and Meryl Streep, but I digress. It was about the Vietnam War. But in those days, afro hairs were more common and I sat down. I was ready for the film, and then a guy with the biggest afro you've ever seen in your life sat in front of me, and I didn't get to see 1 second of the film. What do you say about that? What are we going to do about that particular problem?
Well, where is your resilience? You haven't got over this incident, and the next time I see you, I will give you a hug, and I hope that I can help you get over it.
You can help me with the healing process, okay?
Exactly.
Paula, great to speak to you. Thanks for coming on. Come on again soon. That's Paula Roan, Adrian Barrister, a sort of friend of both of me and Isabel, as you can tell, but perhaps not of the same political persuasion. Should MPs be spending their time discussing whether or not there should be a law against discrimination against people with afro hair? I mean, there shouldn't be discrimination, but do we need a law? 0344 499 1000. When we come back, we will discuss Wes Streeting and his apparent failure so far to do anything about the basket case that is the NHS. That next, stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
If you were watching the handover between me and the great Jeremy Kyle earlier, I recalled that on the filming of Clash of the Titans today, I sort of facetiously said that my tax bill was so horrendous I'd had to sell my wife and my dog. Mike Graham responded by saying, you wouldn't get much for them. And then I think I said something like, well, I got more for the dog. Anyway, my wife has sent me a message. It says, very funny, you've lost a viewer. Me. So there you go. I am in, if I can put it this way, the doghouse. I shouldn't say these things. It was only a joke. I promise you, Henrietta, if, on the off chance you're still watching, but you're probably not. She'll be watching Maestro in Blue, whatever that is. Every night she's watching that when I get home. I've no idea what it is. Anyway, let's get back to the business of the night. Let's talk about Wes Streeting, Isabel. Horrific pictures today of Ashford General Hospital, the A&E department. I say A&E, it's basically a corridor full of, there it is in the sun, full of trolleys with very old people on especially. We heard only last week that it's fairly regular for, in these circumstances, people to die and to lie there dead among other living patients for hours before the hard-pressed staff realise that they passed away. Now, Wes Streeting, people always say, oh, Wes Streeting, he's one of the better ones, isn't he? Well, yeah, maybe, but he keeps shouting about, I'm going to reform the NHS, I'm going to reform the NHS. Well, all he's doing so far, if I can put it this way, is messing around the edges and not doing anything at all substantial. I just want, I want a health secretary to come in and say, do you know what? we're not going to spend £40 million a year on 800 diversity officers. We're going to take that money and spend it on nurses and doctors, frontline medical workers. Do you know what? We're going to do something about the 3,500 unmedically qualified middle managers who earn £100,000 a year or more, many of them on around about 300,000, 400,000, vast sums being earned by 3,500 people. I want a health secretary to come in and say, I'm going to get rid of a load of these people because you don't need them. I'm going to get rid of these diversity officers and I'm going to divert the money where it's needed to frontline medical services. Have we had any inkling of that from Wes Streeting? No, we haven't. He is going to disappear into the abyss of ineffectiveness that all health secretaries disappear into.
Well, I'm glad you think that, and I think that is probably the most likely scenario because, Kev, even if he did what you said, what you suggested, and got rid of all the diversity and equality and inclusion officers and put out an edict to all hospitals saying you're not celebrating Black History Month, because yes, that is something they actually do with exhibition stands and special events, and you just can't imagine why on earth the health service should be spending their time celebrating Black History Month, but that is a thing. The scale of the crisis in the NHS is not just a winter crisis, as we all know, is so gargantuan that measures like that aren't even going to touch the sides. And the thing is that Wes Streeting, in a Labour government with a majority the size that this one has, does actually have the power to do something properly radical. And I'm not talking about dismantling the NHS or not giving care that's free at the point of delivery. I'm talking about a total overhaul of the way the NHS is funded. And we won't go into boring policy detail here, but he has the opportunity, because of Labour's majority, to do something that might just set the health system on a new path. But he won't do it because of the unions, because of all the people that support natural Labour supporters will start shrieking and wailing and gnashing their teeth, saying that it's all a disaster and, you know, he would be ending the NHS as we know it and so on. So unless he has, you know, some kind of courage, which I have yet to see, and it would take immense courage, he's not going to do that. And therefore, we're going to see these pictures of patients on trolleys and more of them for the next few years. And that is a crying shame. If he did do something radical, Wes Streeting could actually save Labour from the disaster it's in and might even get the party re-elected.
But he won't. He won't. And his contribution so far has been the classic Labour response to the NHS. The NHS is always going, we want more money, we need more money. Well, stop spending 40 million quid on 800 diversity officers. There's a start. That will give you some more money. Give us more money, give us more money. So Wes Streeting's contribution so far is to give the NHS 25 billion quid more than the standard issue 190 billion quid a year they get as a matter of course. So 190 billion, an extra 25 billion. They might, as I always say, West might as well have taken that 25 billion quid, built it into a bonfire and set fire to it. That disappears into the NHS money pit and nothing will happen. Meanwhile, MPs on the Public Accounts Committee only yesterday warned that the NHS, talking about these 3,500 middle managers, most of whom have job titles, you can't even work out what it is they do, some of them on astronomical money, 350, 400,000, and much more than doctors, much more than consultants. Anyway, the MPs on the Public Accounts Committee yesterday warned that the NHS is run by bureaucrats who are out of ideas. And they certainly seem to be. Wes Streeting is supposed to have ideas. I don't think he has any at all.
Well, here's another thing about the way the NHS is run. I do know quite a bit about this because I spent a long time studying the state of the NHS for a book. And one thing that might shock people is that there's no particular qualifications for running a hospital. You know, these managers, these chief executives are just basically drawn from a kind of cast of characters that just go round from one NHS trust
The great
to
and
the
the
other.
good, the great and the good, yeah.
They're not great and they're not that
I
good.
agree with that.
They're not good at all. You know, it's a miracle. It's regarded as a miracle if they last more than 2 years in any given trust. And what is the penalty for failing, for demonstrably not performing? The penalty is nothing. You just move on to another job in the NHS where you perform equally badly. And you need zero qualifications of any particular kind to do this job. So is it any wonder that there is such a poverty of performance? You know, we're not recruiting people from the world of business that have turned failing companies around. We're not doing that. We're just recruiting endless kind of pen pushers who know how NHS hospitals don't work and continue to make them not work.
Well, let's talk about the chief executive, someone called Amanda Pritchard, not medically qualified. She joined the NHS Management Training Scheme in 1997 and has worked for the NHS for her entire career. That's Amanda Pritchard, the totally useless chief executive, not medically qualified, you know, proving your point, really.
Well, to me, that CV should be a disqualification for the job that she's got. It's no good employing someone who's always been in the NHS to run the NHS. How on earth are they going to think outside the NHS box about how to fix what's going wrong? I mean, she is utterly immersed. She's basically, you know, a human embodiment of the NHS on 2 legs. She's never going to change anything. And the tragedy of that appointment is that at the time that appointment was made, there was another candidate who came from the private sector and is one of the most respected experts in healthcare delivery all over the world. And he didn't get the job because his private sector credentials were seen to be a disadvantage. Doesn't that tell you everything you need to know? And that, by the way, was under the Tories.
It's ridiculous. So, by the way, Amanda Pritchard, she earned in a couple of years ago, that's her latest salary, £330,000 a year. I would imagine she's on $500,000 a year. And to be fair to her, there are some of these middle managers who earn much more than that. So, you know, she's taking quite a reasonable income there. But 330 grand a year to run the NHS really, really badly. Nice work if you can get it. Stick around, Isabel. And next up, we're going to talk about the death penalty. There's been a poll revealing, not surprisingly, frankly, that the majority of people in Britain, really after the Axel Ruder-Cabana Southport horror, favour a return of the death penalty. We'll talk about that next, so stick around.
the whole speech seems to be a complete acceptance that they've got it wrong so far. And all that doom and gloom we heard from July, August, September, all those emergency press conferences and speeches and clips of cameras basically saying the country's going down the Swanee. Yeah. And now we've got this new Chancellor, you know, it's like, who's the new girl? Like, suddenly she's like, everything's great, Britain's brilliant, we can do this, we can do that, we can do that, which I think is a sort of tacit acceptance, I mean, not even that tacit, a pretty clear acceptance that, you know, they've almost talked the country into a recession.
One thing I did like announced by Donald Trump yesterday, that this is an offer of roughly 2 million federal workers, basically buying them out. We're offering what we would call a redundancy package. I've worked in offices where they've offered redundancy payments like this, and what we saw was an awful lot of people who are good people who can get another job very quickly in the private sector or elsewhere. They take that. Lovely, I'll get paid for 8 months, thank you very much. They get another job. The people who know they're unemployable anywhere else, they stay. You get stuck with the worst people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about the death penalty. Obviously, the debate is kind of raging after the Southport horror, and when we learned last week of the just horrific details of what went on in that dance hall, in the dance class. 3 little girls, you know, stabbed to death by that monster. So a lot of people just saying, well, you know, what really is the point of keeping that guy in prison for more than half a century? Where does that get us? Might it not actually even be more humane to put him out of his misery and indeed put him out of our misery? But certainly a poll in the Times, or revealed by the Times, has revealed that now quite a substantial majority of Brits would favour a return of the death penalty in exceptional circumstances. And interestingly, Isabel, the biggest number of people who favour that death penalty return are young people, millennials. Now, my point about this is, I know we discussed it last week, and you're against the death penalty. I'm sort of on the fence, but I think I'm being persuaded. Why not? But my feeling is that the Westminster Bubble Gang have known for years, that the decades, that the majority of the British public would like a death penalty in exceptional circumstances, and yet our MPs, most of them former local councillors, take it upon themselves to protect the Neanderthal public from our baser instincts. And I think why don't the people who represent us in Parliament listen to us and act on it? Why do they just stick their fingers in their ears and never listen to the people of this country about the death penalty?
Well, I think it's a legitimate debate to have as to whether there is a case for the return of the death penalty for child killers. I hate the death penalty. I abhor it. I hate all the kind of machinery and paraphernalia that goes with it, the whole industry around it. It makes me feel sick. But I am conflicted a little when it comes to monsters like Rudy Cabana and the parents of that poor little girl, Sarah Sharif. And there have been many others, haven't there, unfortunately. And I do wonder whether it might be a deterrent, at least in some cases. I don't know. I've never thought anyone who abuses or harms children is rational about it and does it because they don't think they're going to get caught, except in the case of grooming gangs. But when it comes to murders, I'm not sure these people are in their right minds. But I don't think that there should be a kind of, I don't know, a blackout on having that discussion. You know, why can't parliamentarians debate it? And I don't think it's a party political thing. I think it's a bit like, you know, in a very
I agree with that. It's not really...
It's a bit like euthanasia. You know, people have different views, not along party lines on this. It's a matter of conscience.
Let me suggest this to you. You know, I've had a lot of calls, obviously, ever since last week about the death penalty, and people saying, yeah, bring back the rope, yeah, make him swing and all this kind of stuff. Well, you know, as I say, I think bearing in mind Southport and other horrors, you know, child killers, people like that, maybe even some of those grooming gang people who are raping vulnerable underage girls, that kind of thing. You know, why does the death penalty have to involve theatre? You know, the gallows and the noose are theatre. The electric chair is theatre. It's as if we must not only execute them, people, we must make a show of it. Well, why don't we, if we take somebody like that monster in Southport, you know, and we decide, you know, what's the point of keeping him alive for half a century? Why don't we just put them to death in the way we put down dogs, give them an injection and they peacefully pass away? We don't have to make it into a grisly spectacle. Why don't we do it like that?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. And I think it is the theatre that repels me as much as the actuality of it. The theatre is grotesque.
I don't like that either. I agree with you.
We still see it in other countries. And, you know, sometimes you read reports of executions in America. And I always sort of try not to read them, but somehow feel drawn to them and then hate myself for looking at them.
What was their last meal? That's what I always want to read.
It's sick, isn't it? It's really sick. I don't want to have anything to do with it, and by reading it you're participating in some way.
Yeah.
So yeah, could it just be done quietly? Yeah. Well, people would say, well, how would we know what was really happening?
I mean, for example, when they use the lethal injection in America, as some states do, I can't remember the name of it, it's hydrochloride something, but this injection is sort of put in via a catheter or something, and it's a very painful, long process, and you see them apparently spasming and, you know, some foam coming out of their mouths and stuff like that. Well, we don't need to do it with that chemical. As I say, I think I told you last week, one of the saddest things I've done quite a few times now, about 4 or 5 times in my life, I've had to take my beloved dogs down to the vet to put them down, and it's very, very sad, makes you cry. But it's a very peaceful process. They just drift away calmly. Why can't we do that to the people that we feel deserve execution? We don't have to indulge in the spectacle, do we?
I don't know the answer. I don't think there can be a good answer, because after all, everything that I've read about the way people die if they choose to take their own life, you know, for example, at the Swiss clinic Dignitas, doesn't involve any foaming at the mouth or any other theatrics. But, you know, even talking about this is making me feel queasy. I hate it. You know, I know, even though I felt conflicted, and I'm sure many of our listeners are having the same kind of wrestling with their own mind about this. I know from the way I feel just talking about this, literally feeling a bit sick, that I want nothing to do with it.
You're viscerally against it, yeah.
I think what this really touches on is the desperation of so many of us to feel that this can never happen again, and what can we do to kind of end the scourge of this appalling child abuse in our country. And you mentioned about the grooming gangs, and, you know, them too. I'm not sure it's any better to ritually rape and abuse little girls over long periods of years than it is to stab them to death in an afternoon.
Do you think there's something incongruous about what looks now to be an increasing majority of MPs who are in favour of assisted dying? So they're in favour of that, but the majority of MPs would definitely be against the death penalty. Something incongruous about that, isn't there?
I agree that, again, it just comes back to, can't we talk about this openly, even if it's to decide this is not what we are and not what we're going to do? You know, people up and down the country feel the need for some kind of conversation about this. I knew they would. That's why you and I discussed it just a little under a week ago. I said to you at the time, people are going to want to talk about this. And they do, and it's because we just can't fathom how we can keep someone like Rudy Cabana in our midst, and that's even within a prison setting. Why? What's the point of him?
Absolutely. I mean, as we also discussed last week, I think the entire nation can take some solace in the fact that I would predict that Mr. Rudakapana's time behind bars will not be pleasant, put it that way. Prison justice is coming his way. But again, you know, we know he's going to get that crap beaten out of him day in, day out. It's going to be dreadful for him. I don't care, don't get me wrong. Again, I mean, maybe it would be more humane to just put him out of his misery.
Well, maybe people should be given the choice. Maybe they could opt for it. I don't know. Whatever we're doing, it isn't working, is it? There's far too many absolutely hideous cases of child murder and child abuse in our country, and people are yearning for something, anything that reduces the number of victims. Something's going terribly, terribly wrong in our country, that we have so many cases of this kind.
It really, really is. You're absolutely right, Isabel. Well, listen, thank you for a typically absorbing hour, and you'll be back tomorrow night for another 60 sizzling minutes. That's Isabel Oakeshott Talks, a fabulous international editor. Now, coming up after the 8 o'clock news, I'm going to be talking to Ben Habib. He's going to join me. We're going to discuss the immigration crisis, and also I want to talk about the woke king, who I believe is becoming a bit of a problem. So stay tuned for all of that after the news. This is The Political Asylum.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. So a little later, in about half an hour, I'm going to be taking your calls. 03444991000. Did you see that the Prince of Darkness, old Mandy, Lord Peter Mandelson, is now saying, I was wrong to criticise Donald Trump a few years ago. What he called him? He called him a white supremacist and a threat to the world. You know, Donald Trump is going to kick him all over Washington. He's going to make him grovel every single day. Mandelson will think, ooh, I'm on diplomacy, aren't I doing well? No, 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 you're the crap under Donald Trump's shoes, you really are. He doesn't like you. He doesn't like Keir Starmer. He doesn't like this country. He doesn't like socialists. He does actually like this country. He doesn't like the government. So that's our one hope. Anyway, so your calls in half an hour, death penalty. Do you fancy it back? What did you think about that, the fact that MPs, and indeed we find out now a Lord, are all sitting on this committee at the moment in the middle of the House of Commons in Parliament discussing whether or not to bring in a law banning discrimination against afro hairdos. Nobody wants that kind of discrimination, terrible thing, but is that a good use of MPs' time? The country's falling apart at the seams. The world is on the precipice, and they're talking about afro hairdos. Do me a favour. 03444991000. And is the king too woke? I'm going to talk in a minute with Ben Habib about this. Is he too woke? Stepping in to order the change of the name of a Navy submarine, HMS Agincourt, to HMS Achilles, because Agincourt, of course, that was a battle that the British won. We always win the battles against the French, you notice that. We've never lost, I don't think. And he said that it should be called Agincourt because that would offend the French. Well, Your Majesty, we like offending the French. Be a laugh. What's the matter with you? Let me know what you think about that. I think this guy's too woke. He's very green as well, the Green King. Sounds like a pub, but it's actually our monarch. He's almost as bad as Ed Miliband. Apparently he's a big fan of Ed Miliband's mad scheme to turn the entire country into a mass of windmills and solar panels. King loves that. I think he's a worry, this guy. 03444991000. Now, let's go over to the great man, the chairman of... we'll work out what this is. Chairman of the Great British PAC, former Deputy Leader of Reform UK, of course, Ben Habib. Hello, Ben.
Good evening, Kevin. Good to see you.
Tell me about what's the Great British PAC?
So the Great British PAC is the Great British Political Action Committee. And what we are is essentially an organisation which has three missions. One, to make sure that the right-wing politicians in this country are actually right-wing.
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would be nice. Believe in borders, deregulation, lower taxes, promotion of the United Kingdom, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that's what I call our purpose.
Good.
And then the second thing is to produce policies which deliver that purpose. And for the purposes of creating those policies, we have a platform through which the ordinary voter can make their views known, and then we will garner their views and put that into sort of policies that give effect to our purpose. So purpose, policies, and then the third thing is people. So we will find candidates, unlike the low quality of MP that typically inhabits the House of Commons. We will find candidates who we think are high quality, understand the issues, believe in the mission, train them up, get them ready for office, and then, frankly, they can go and join either Reform UK or the Tories or whoever. But our aim is to shift the centre of gravity of debate to where it should be, in the United Kingdom, allow our politicians to adopt a Trumpian kind of policy without being castigated for doing so, and then create the policies and provide the individuals for our political parties to give effect to what we all know the country so desperately needs, which is saving, protecting, promoting, and celebrating.
Well, Ben, you're the man to do that, and I very much like the sound of all those missions. Good luck with that. Godspeed. Godspeed. Now, let's talk about the immigration catastrophe, because you will have seen, was it yesterday, that it emerged that it is projected that by 2032, our official population will be 72.5 million. And that involves a 4.9 million increase in net migration between now and 2032, which I think works out about 300,000, 400,000 a year. So this population explosion that we found out about only recently, that the Tories had deceived the nation for 14 years, allowing in as many as 1,100,000 legal migrants every year. net migration standing at obscene figures like 600,000, 700,000 annually. Well, we've now learnt that this is going to continue at the rate of 300 to 400 a year, 5 million basically between now and 2032. And Keir Starmer, when asked, is refusing to even contemplate the idea of a cap on these escalating numbers. Won't even think about maybe putting a number on it. What's wrong with this guy?
So the Treasury, and I think our political class, is hijacked by the notion that immigration is good for the economy. And it's basically, as you and I know, immigration is a Ponzi scheme. It doesn't grow the economy. It only gives the impression that it's growing the economy for as long as it continues to go. But what we're doing is importing into this country lots of low-skilled people on low wages, giving businesses the opportunity not to upskill, not to automate, dumbing down our entire economy, undermining the British worker because he can't get a decent wage. And then in the pursuit of making money, the government is taxing us to the hilt. We are in a doom loop on the back of mass immigration. And one of the things the Great British Pack is going to do, this new initiative that I was talking about, is to allow our politicians to recognise that actually what we need is an instant moratorium on immigration. We need an immigration emergency. We need a border emergency. We need to recognize that immigration doesn't need to go to net zero. Immigration's got to stop for a period. Those who are here but don't hold British passports should not be given British passports until we've got immigration under control. There should be a program for the detaining and deportation of those people who are in this country, all of them who are in this country illegally. And we should also be having a program for the repatriation of people consensually back to their home countries in order to get our population down and to bring the ecosystem that is the United Kingdom back to stability.
New figures out, I don't know if you spotted this story, Ben, that taxpayers are forking out every single day £3,000 for new clothes and shoes for channel migrants, the illegal cross-channel migrants.
Yeah.
And some are also offered free mobile phones. And the Home Office bill for that could be £4 million over the next 3 years. So what we're doing, we're not doing anything to deter or prevent. We're just encouraging these numbers to continue to escalate. And as I say, your thoughts on the fact that this ludicrous Prime Minister of ours, you know, he sort of almost reeled back, offended by the question when somebody said, do you think perhaps we should think about a cap on the number of immigrants we're allowing into the country? No, that won't be necessary. No, we won't be putting a figure on it. Why not?
Kevin, there shouldn't be a cap. We should be repatriating people. The cap should be in negative territory. Are you with me?
Yes.
We've got to get a grip of the problem that has beset the country. But of course, as you and I know, we've discussed before, Keir Starmer couldn't give a damn about the nation state that is the United Kingdom. He doesn't see the nation state of the United Kingdom as being an important thing. He doesn't care about borders. He doesn't care about governments being in this country. He'd gladly hand it over to Brussels. He doesn't care about British citizens any more than he cares about any other human being. He sees everyone as basically equal, whether you're born here, elsewhere, whether you carry a British passport or not. He will promote the interests of illegal migrants, absolutely will. And if you should protest against it, you will be categorized as far right, and you will have the book thrown at you. Even if you are peacefully protesting, you will be told that you're guilty of hate speech, you will be arrested, and you will have the criminal justice system directed at you. That is our Prime Minister.
Yeah,
and we are in a very, very bad place.
I think, I don't say this lightly, I think he hates us.
I think he does, yeah.
And I think that ludicrous, moronic offensive report commissioned by Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, by Home Office dorks, which suggested that any of us who think there might be two-tier policing must be right-wing extremists, far-right extremists, those of us who chose to condemn the Pakistani Muslim men who were in the grooming gangs, the rape gangs. We were accused in this report of exploiting that scandal to whip up anti-Islam sentiments. Now, all this to me indicates that we don't agree with Keir Starmer. We don't agree with those people in the Home Office, who, by the way, are a disgrace to the civil service. And therefore, they just say we are far-right extremists, which is it's an indication of their contempt and hatred for the majority of people in this country. I don't say that lightly, but I do genuinely think the Prime Minister does not like the people of Great Britain.
No, he doesn't. I mean, it's clear he doesn't, because if he for British people, he wouldn't be, instead of hiding the identity of Ruda Cabana, the Southport killer, and keeping us all in suspense, allowing rumours to spread, allowing the discontent to spread, which eventually turned into protests. He wouldn't have allowed any of that. He would have got up and he said, Ruda Cabana is a second-generation Rwandan. He's not Welsh. He's a second-generation Rwandan. He possesses Al-Qaeda workbooks. He's got ricin. He stabbed one girl 122 times. She was 7 years old. The other girl, who was 6 years old, was stabbed 80-odd times. The only reason he stopped stabbing the second one was because he was trying to behead her. And we will stop this from happening on our streets. We will bring it to a halt, and we will stop progressive discrimination in favour of those people who come to this country, giving them the protective blanket they need to hold us in antipathy and do the things that they wish to do to damage this country. And I will protect this country. And if he'd got up and he said that, Kevin, we wouldn't have had the protests. He wouldn't have had to get up and categorise everyone as far right. The criminal justice system wouldn't have to be deployed. And I think we've got 71 odd people in jail at the moment because of things they said, not because of things they did, but because of things they said in those protests. The whole country needs a reset. And that's why we've got to make it completely normalised for us to have a discussion without fear or favour about what's required in order to reset the country and how we do it.
Let's just have a quick recap about the way this country runs. The white far-right extremist who assassinated the Labour MP Joe Cox was a white guy. The body politic were down on him like a ton of bricks within seconds. He's a terrorist. He's a terrorist, obviously. The guy, the Welsh guy who watched that BBC drama about the Rochdale rape scandal called Three Girls, he watched it, was so enraged, he climbed into his van, drove up the M4 all the way to London and drove into the worshippers outside the Finsbury Park Mosque, killing one of them. A deplorable thing to do. He was white. The body politic, he's a terrorist! He's a terrorist! Axel Ruda Cabana, a young man of colour, the son of Rwandan migrants, he's not a terrorist. He's not a terrorist. My point about him and any circumstances like this, Ben, is that old saying, isn't it? If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck. Now, I would say, call me controversial, but I would say that someone who had in their home enough ricin to kill thousands of people and an Al-Qaeda manual written by an Islamic terrorist, an Islamic extremist, I would say that that person is in all likelihood a terrorist, and yet our body politic, our Prime Minister, the police, no, he does not conform to the legal definition of terrorism. This is absurd. This is absurd.
It is absurd. And, you know, they will hide behind the... they'll say that... They have said that we couldn't reveal his identity because we didn't want to stoke trouble and blah, blah, blah. But they tried to mislead us. I know they're lying, because they tried to mislead us. They described him as a Welshman. Now, he may have been born in Cardiff or wherever it was, and he may therefore technically be Welsh from that definition. But the reason they said he was a Welshman was not because he was born in Wales, but because they wanted to conjure up an image in our minds of a farmer with a bunch of sheep doing typically what we would expect Welshmen to do. They wanted to deflect from reality.
Yeah, don't forget, Ben, then the Merseyside police, in the wake of that terrible incident in Southport, the murders, released a picture of the perpetrator when we finally knew his name, and it was a picture of him as an angelic 12-year-old choir boy. Now, why didn't they release a current picture? I'll tell you why they didn't do it, because that might have made us think badly of him. So here's a nice picture. What a lovely little kid. They think that somehow or other we're going to think better of him. Or call me old-fashioned, but when somebody has just stabbed to death 3 poor little schoolgirls, I tend to think badly on them, and no amount of angelic pictures is going to change that. It is pathetic. It is pathetic, and it's got to stop. And I'll tell you something else that's pathetic, Ben, is wokery. And we're going to talk about that after these messages. Stay where you are.
In Southport, go.
Just worked out why they want the 3rd runway at Heathrow and they want all them other runways around the country. Labour want to import more people, mate. Great show.
Isabel, interesting.
Well, I'll tell you what would make me in favour of a 3rd runway if it was exclusively used to deport illegal immigrants and foreign criminals. In that case, I'm well up for a 3rd runway. Let's have a special dedicated runway for deportation.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We've just got Ben Habib just for a few more minutes. I know he's got to dash off fairly soon. Ben, Donald Trump is currently driving a freight train through the less than wonderful world of wokery. Thank God for that. People are loving watching him destroy the DEI.
That's fantastic.
Industry. It really is. Now, wokery, the lefties were always saying, it's just the culture wars. You lot are obsessed with the culture wars. Really doesn't matter. Well, it does. It does. Wokery is the mechanism by which extreme left-wingism is promoted. It's a war on our traditions. Now, this worries me. The king is worrying me. The Green King sounds like a pub, doesn't it? He's a massive, he's a massive fan of Crazy Ed Miliband's lunacy, his net zero madness. He really likes the idea of turning the country into one big windmill and one big solar panel. That worries me. But now we learn that he ordered the renaming of a new Navy submarine, Royal Navy submarine called HMS Agincourt. He said, oh, you can't call it that because that will offend the French. It's now going to be called the HMS Achilles. Well, I'd make 2 points about this. Charlie, get this on board. We like offending the French. You know, we would have loved to have called it Agincourt. Who cares what they think? And secondly, we called it HMS Achilles. Won't that be offensive to the Greeks? I mean, what would his dad have to say about that? You know, this king is actually a bit of a woke problem, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't know any of these views. If he was being the titular king of the United Kingdom, which is what he should be, we wouldn't know his views, but we do know his views, and that's quite worrying. But Agincourt is very interesting to me because Agincourt, and I'm going to this visually, I suppose people who are listening on the radio won't see this, but Agincourt is where this sign came from. The V sign.
Right. The V sign. He's doing the V's up, ladies and gentlemen, listening on the radio.
Yeah. So that was what the British longbowmen used to do at Agincourt. Yeah. Because if the French got hold of a longbowman, what they would do is chop their fingers off, because a longbowman on the English side was so brilliant at killing French soldiers that the first thing they'd do if they captured one was chop those fingers off. So what the English used to do, where the longbowmen standing in a line, would show their 2 fingers to the French. And so Agincourt...
I never knew this. I never knew this.
Agincourt is where that comes from, and I say that to the French.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. One last point before you go, Ben. You know, talking about wokery, we know what we're talking about. It is actually a covert attack, usually on our traditions. It's to destabilise traditional British culture. That's what it's about, and that's why people like Boris Johnson, David Cameron, Theresa May were so remiss in just sort of dismissing it and not paying much attention to it. It has changed our schools, our education system. It has changed everything about this country. And like in America, I think we should fight back. Do you remember the Archbishop of Wokery, Canterbury, Justin Welby? Now, the bishop, you know, he got defenestrated quite rightly for turning his back, for allowing the prolonged child abuse by a colleague of his. The Bishop of Dover, Rose Hudson Wilkin, has incredibly compared the Archbishop of Canterbury to being effectively crucified like Christ. Well, I would say that the thing is, Rose, Jesus did not turn a blind eye to the paedophile torture of little boys over a number of decades, and Welby did. So it is this defence of wokery that has to go, doesn't it? We have to stop.
Absolutely. And Welby was a really ill-placed man to be in charge of the church. He was politicised. Again, he was anti-British. He was pro-EU, anti the nation state that is the United Kingdom. And actually, he was prepared to give succor to paedophiles. I mean, that's just unacceptable.
It really
Terrible,
is,
man.
and he's not even allowed to be a local parish priest anymore.
Yeah.
So good luck, Justin. See you on the other side. Listen, Ben, I know you've got to go, so thank you very much for your time. Always a pleasure. That is Ben Habib, chairman of the Great British PAC. When you heard him explain what that is, sounds like an excellent organisation, and he is a very fine voice, as you well know. So next up, we're going to go to break now, and when we come back, we're going to take some of your calls. I'm going to read some of your messages. So get involved, get on the call, get on the blower, and call me on 03444991000. You can leave a voice note, a WhatsApp voice note, if you like. We'll play that out definitely at some point in the show. So it's good to talk on Talk. Let's do it right after these messages.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. By the way, just talking about Justin Welby, I see the Bishop of Liverpool, one of Justin Welby's former colleagues, a guy called John Perumbalath. He has been accused of sexual assault and harassment. So another bad day for the C of E. He denies the allegations, which date back to 2023, when the Church of England was embroiled in an abuse scandal. That abuse scandal that triggered the resignation of Justin Welby. So more problems for the C of E. Important to stress that the Bishop of Liverpool denies these allegations of sexual assault and harassment, but bad headlines for our national church. So let's, by the way, I'll just tell you what's coming up after we've spoken on the phone, and I've read some of your messages. So in about 15 minutes, we're going to deal with what you might call the bully dog crisis. About 4,500 of these animals are currently, being held in compounds, paid for by the police, veterinary bills, and so on and so forth, feeding them and etc. It's costing the police millions and millions of pounds, while the courts, in their traditionally long-winded way, decide on the fate of these hounds. So the bully dogs, XL bully dogs, are illegal, and they've been seized from people all over the country, 4,500 of them. And basically they're stuck in these compounds. The police are having to pay for their veterinary bills, for their food and all this kind of stuff. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's a ridiculous situation. I feel sorry for the animals. Kind of feel sorry for the police. This is an absolute shambles. We'll talk to Peter Egan about that in a little while. Much to discuss there. Now, first up, though, time for your calls. I just got a message here from Claire. It's quite long, but I rather liked it. Evening, Kev. Starmer hates this country, hates the people of this country, and everything that he has done and said proves this. Trump gave his inauguration speech, and in it he welcomed all of the people of his country and told them of his great plans. But Starmer has clearly shown that his allegiance as Prime Minister is to the lefty socialists in this nation of ours, and he calls out all others as right-wing thugs. That's the big difference. Trump is all-encompassing. Starmer is divisive. Yeah, Starmer, I think, sees himself as the Prime Minister or the Premier of left-wing people, you know, who aren't racist. He thinks most of us are racist, right-wing thugs. You know why he thinks that? Because we don't have the same opinions as him. No ability to intelligently debate issues. If you don't agree with Keir Starmer, you're a far-right thug. If you think there's two-tier policing, you're a far-right thug. If you condemn the Muslim rape gangs, you're Islamophobic, and so on and so forth. Honestly, this guy, he's like a sixth form student activist. It's pathetic. It's really pathetic. Trapped in his own little world. Anyway, let's go to the phones. And first of all, she wants to talk about the NHS. I'm glad. It's Samantha from Derbyshire. Welcome to the show, Samantha. You were a NHS nurse for 39 years, I note.
Feel quite overwhelmed. I was nurse. Oh, bloody hell.
Hello.
Right.
Are you there? What's going on?
Right. Yeah.
Let's start talking, shall we, Samantha?
I'm a critical care nurse, A&E trauma nurse, and I stopped watching mainstream after COVID, the way they portrayed it. I worked in A&E, major trauma centres, old school, Project 2000 changed how nursing is today. The NHS is fighting NHS. You've got the paramedics that have, they come to us, they have to offload within a certain number of time.
Are you still working there, Samantha? Are you still at the NHS?
No, I was assaulted twice and ended it last year.
Did you? Oh my God!
But I'm an NHS carry-on nurse. That's me.
Right. Carry on nurse. What do you do? I mean, we did this report earlier, featured it anyway. That me and Isabel Oakeshott were discussing how we feel. That Wes Streeting, he's the latest health secretary. You must have seen a few in your time. They come and they go. Each one of them turns up going, I'm going to reform the NHS. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it. He's going the same way as the rest of them, isn't he? He's not going to fix it.
I'm a lot calmer now. Yeah. So the NHS was made and for the people. We bought into it. And we cared for people. You know, you had domestics that kept the hospitals clean. You could bring flowers in. You could do all of that.
Grapes, things like that. Yeah, you're not allowed to do that anymore, are you? It's ridiculous.
No.
Oh, yeah. What about Samantha? I heard a caller to talk earlier today. I've done this story many a long time. If a bloke like me. I think I'm sort of fairly obviously male. If I go to get an X-ray, NHS staff, nurses, doctors have to ask me if I'm pregnant. You know, it's never happened to me, but if it does, I'm going to take a wild guess. It's pathetic, isn't it?
Well, no, because I don't feel it's true.
Well, but no, it is true. It happens all the time.
No.
It does happen, that, Samantha. It's NHS policy. They have to ask everyone going in for an X-ray whether or not they're pregnant in case it damages their unborn child. But most blokes say, well, you know, it's unlikely that I'll have an unborn child because I'm a male. But they do have to ask it. It's NHS policy.
So I'm old school. You know, my experience and my I love the NHS. I absolutely adore it. And it's been broken because it's not being invested with.
It's a lovely idea. I agree, and you're right. It's sorely lacking. It's not so much lacking in investment. It's lacking in the ability to spend the money it's given wisely. It spends its money. It spends its money like a drunken sailor. Gives it to all the wrong people.
We don't need money. The investment is people that know how to run it.
Good point. Good point. Nurses like me, my rite of passage was, experience. Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah.
And that changed. And Mike, I listened to Mike this morning and about nurses, going and getting extra jobs. In my day, we didn't get a very good wage, and we did. And I can remember doing my first agency shift. And it wasn't a lot of money, but it was amazing. But now, the reason I've left, my heart's still there, is because I feel overwhelmed with the fact I can't look after my patients anymore.
Because you don't have enough facilities, you don't, or what? Why did you conclude that you couldn't properly look after your patients, Samantha?
Well, firstly, because you're building these A&Es that are magnificent. And, I'm a critical care nurse. I went through A&E through COVID, and, they didn't portray it at all on how the reality was. Breathtaking absolutely floored me, because they could have written about me. They didn't portray it, and the population are like rats. They're like, let's listen to this, let's follow the Pied Piper. We did our best. And I'm sorry if I'm going off on a tangent. What I wanted, and many people wanted, was to stop people banging the bloody pans and to listen to the fact you need to stay home, and we can deal with this.
Well, but I mean, a lot of us felt we ought to be able to go to hospital. We ought to be able to go and see our doctors. We didn't like the fact that the hospitals became no-go zones. You can't go to hospital. You're too sick.
No, you couldn't.
You should have been able to.
No.
You should, Samantha. Yeah, you should. What's the point of us paying for the NHS if we're not allowed to go to it?
I respect you.
Yeah.
Right. I was working in A&E when the first Newham patient came in to A&E.
Yeah.
And nobody wanted to look after that patient.
Well, they should have done,
and we
shouldn't
stood
they?
in A&E, and they had a vomit bowl with people's names in it, and I took it on. And I looked after that patient. No one came near to me, and I knew that I needed to go back into ICU. And what I went through.
Yeah, well, look.
You know what?
Go on.
No, what I went through was absolutely amazing, and it was amazing because people came around. Nursing is the most amazing career.
Yeah. Nobody's complaining about the nurses or the doctors. We know that once you do get to the frontline medical services in the NHS, the treatment is second to none. The problem is getting there.
Not now, Mike. Not now. Not now.
I'm Kevin. I'm not Mike. But
it's because of Mike this morning, because I sat and watched him. Kevin, not now. The thing is, it's broken.
It's totally broken, but I think it started getting broken in the COVID crisis when, bizarrely, the NHS decided that we weren't allowed to go anywhere near it. That's not what we pay our taxes for. Samantha, listen, respect to you. I'm sorry that you've left. We probably need more nurses like you. In fact, we definitely do, who are, committed to their job. But thank you very much for an excellent call. Samantha in Derbyshire there, a nurse who's left the NHS after being assaulted twice and doesn't feel that she any longer has the facilities to treat her patients properly. Think on that. Let's go to Janice in Essex. Hello, Janice.
Hi, Kevin. Nice to speak to you again.
Always a pleasure. Yes, it has. And now you want to talk. I've got a note here saying about the third runway, isn't it?
Third, and there's another one they want to build. Now, if I'm living in a parallel universe because they're going hell for leather for green, Why are they going to build 2 more runways with guzzling jets? It doesn't make any sense.
Because
don't
they're mangling words and they're just trying to con us with a load of verbiage nonsense.
Anyway.
Yeah,
And
you can't have a green runway. You can't have a green runway.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Can I say something?
Of course.
We've had 8 days of no wind, and then we had 2 days of high winds. That means the wind farms don't work. We've had 2% energy from that.
Yeah, I know. Well,
yeah, no. Mad like that. What are we? The only people that are going to get their houses warm and lit up are those madmen.
Well,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, Ed Miliband, you know,
and Blair.
Well, Blair's not the net zero secretary, is he? Right now?
No, he might not be, but he's in big business with it.
Well, maybe.
He's in a company. Well, he's going to make money, as if he ain't got enough.
Yeah. I mean, I mean that may or may not be the case, but what I do know is Ed Miliband. I don't actually believe he's in it for the money. He's in it because he's a zealot. He's a deranged lunatic who actually believes in all this claptrap. And you're quite right. Windmills.
How are we gonna stop them?
Windmills.
How are we going to stop them?
Well, we voted them into power, didn't we?
Country. Yeah. Well, I didn't.
Nor did I. However, the people of this country voted them into the power, and nothing can stop them.
They're regretting it.
Yeah, they are. Buyer's remorse. Nothing can stop them. That's the problem, Janice. Nothing can stop them. And the only thing that's going to stop them, and I think this is coming, I suspect with Ed Miliband's incoherent claptrap that doesn't make any sense, any logical sense whatsoever, we'll be plunged into darkness. The lights are going to go out within a year, maybe. Once we start having mass power cuts, Keir Starmer's going to have to get rid of that madman and start bringing in energy policies that don't plunge us into darkness. But right now, our energy policies, our deranged, insane energy policies are on course to cause widespread power cuts before too long, and that will be the wake-up call that perhaps this government needs to actually have a look at that net zero secretary and say, ooh, he's insane, let's fire him. What do you reckon?
That why haven't they worked it out? No, they were going to stop him, and Reeves was going to stop him and say, no, you've got to go back on it, and the government, the money side said go back on it, but now she said no, you can carry on, go on forever.
Yeah, well, they're going to carry on right now because at the moment we're not actually at crisis point. When we get to crisis point, they'll have to do something about it, but by then the nation will be furious. I mean, you know, the lights are going to go out thanks to this insanity being imposed on us by this crazy guy, Ed Miliband. It is just so ridiculous, Janice. Janice, listen, I've got to go, but thank you very much for an excellent call, as always. Always good to talk to you. Keep calling. Janice in Essex there. We're going to go to break now. When we come back, we're going to be talking about, as I said earlier, what you might call a crisis on the XL bully dog front. 4,500 of them sort of trapped in these compounds, being fed and looked after by the police, massive multi-million-pound veterinary bills, while the courts decide whether or not to put them down. I mean, this is crazy too. We'll talk to Peter Egan about that in just a little while. Stay tuned.
killed growth. This is all panic, isn't it? This is a good case to sack the Chancellor.
No, complete rubbish. Come on, look, you saw today a strong Chancellor in control of the agenda for this country.
Really? Or a panicking Chancellor pivoting and trying to U-turn?
Panicking. You're creating a fiction, Harry.
Would you like the job if she...
It was a great speech today, setting out this government's agenda, why the plan for change is working, the plan for change that the British people voted for, with a historic landslide for a Labour government. We're getting on with the job of the change that we promised in delivering, and that is a great thing for the country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is a hell of a story, a hell of a worrying story. It's about XL bully dogs. Ever since February 24, it's been illegal to keep these devil dogs, as they're known. I mean, they can be unruly and they can be dangerous, as we well know. Now, they've been rounded up and they've been put into kennels run by the police. So they have veterinary bills, they have the kennelling bills, and it's costing the police a fortune. In 2018, or the bill from February to September last year, 2024, was £11 million and rising. I mean, I'm worried about the police. This seems an unnecessary burden on them. And I'm worried about the dogs as well. Of course, why are they all there? It's a sort of grim spectacle, a grim situation. We're waiting, or the police are waiting, for the courts to decide on the fate of these dogs. So the court system takes forever, as we all know. So they're there for like a year, for longer. And frankly, it's the countdown to death. The courts, of course, usually decide these dogs have to be put down, but the legal process means they have to be kept in these compounds. Seems all wrong to me. Let's talk to our friend of the show, of course, animal rights activist and actor Peter Egan, and also an expert on XL bully dogs, Hannah Malloy. Welcome, both of you. And
Hi.
If I could start with you, Peter, just on a sort of humane basis, I don't like the sound of this. These poor dogs, all kept in these compounds. The police being forced to look after them. I feel sorry for the police to an extent. But what we're waiting for is for the courts to come to the decision, the almost inevitable decision, to put these poor dogs down. This is a grim and ridiculous situation, is it not?
Absolutely, because those poor dogs are going to be, if it's a year, kept in captivity without any socializing or any human interaction, are going to come out of there much worse than they went in. I mean, if you're going to introduce an animal of the size of an XL bully into your life, part of your first responsibility is to care and socialize for that animal. This applies to all animals, I think, that we bring into our lives, small or large. Our first responsibility is to socialize them and to make them human and animal friendly. And I don't see how that's ever going to happen with these XL bullies in a police compound for a year. They're going to go stir crazy. Their energy is going to be colossal, and there isn't going to be anyone who's going to be working on their temperament and their socialization. So it's a disaster from the beginning.
It really is. Hannah, I gather there are 4,500 such dogs being kennelled and tended to essentially by the police forces. And as I said to Peter, this is while the courts, you know, the wheels of justice in this country, of course, turn notoriously slowly. This is while the courts get round to deciding on the fates of these dogs, many of which I assume will, after a year or a year and a half, actually be put down. But this entire circumstance is just wrong, isn't it? We've got to do something about this.
Absolutely. And that, Kevin, is a number that is going to stick in some people's throats, because at the beginning of the XL bully ban discussion, I believe it was DEFRA that assumed that there were maybe about 5,000 of them in the country. And since then, 55,000 have been registered as exempt. And so now we have 5,000 of them in kennels. So the government drastically underestimated the population size of this dog breed type. I think they hadn't even been fully recognised at the point that the attacks were happening. And so, yeah, it's a horrendous welfare issue. And this was happening way before the XL bully was added to the dangerous dogs list, an issue that so many campaigners said would happen. Our police kennels were already overflowing, and we had already suggested that dog bites were costing the NHS £777 million a year.
You're serious?
Now we're spending, £25 million on kennelling these dogs who have done nothing wrong other than be born into a body that we've suddenly decided is not acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, it's not their fault. I mean, they can be unruly, they can be dangerous, but, they're just, when I say just dogs, they're dogs. It's not their fault. With the XL bullies, are they, Hannah, completely unlawful, or can you prove that they're okay to be a family pet as long as they pass the tests, or do they all have to go to these compounds?
I think the difficulty is that they're being seized now because they have been found after the exemption. So that's the difficulty that a lot of people are having is dogs are being, well, that's an XL bully, that's the dangerous dog, and you needed to have had your dog exempted by a particular period of time. So now the lengthy process of fighting for each of those dogs carries on, just as it has done for 30 years for all pit bull types, and the owners that have just had to say, no, my dog is a good dog. And again, as Peter was saying, these dogs are so much more likely to suffer afterwards and during kennelling, because they're not getting socialised. They're not often, sometimes getting walked. Some of the police compounds use private kennel facilities. Some of those kennel facilities don't have dog walkers that will walk dangerous dogs. So some of these dogs literally just stay in kennels.
Yeah. And this is a recipe to make them more dangerous, I would suggest.
Absolutely.
Well, I think somebody's got to do something about this. This is not acceptable. Can I just, because we haven't got too long, I'm going to perhaps tackle you both on this one, because I'm appalled by this. The Morocco, as part of Africa, has got the World Cup, the Soccer World Cup in 2030. To prepare for this great sporting event, the Moroccan authorities are planning to exterminate 3 million stray dogs. Your thoughts, Peter?
Well, they've actually already started doing that. And I think part of the FIFA mandate bid included the fact that this shouldn't happen. And in fact, Morocco is ignoring this, and they are creating the most ugly situation for the beautiful game. To actually, and also the way that they are dealing with these poor stray dogs. They're injecting them with strychnine. They're killing them with blunt instruments. They're doing this also in front of children. And this is a contravention of the mandate on the rights of the child, the UN mandate on the rights of the child, that no child should witness cruelty either in the home or in the street. And so they are actually breaking their own commitment to that mandate by doing this. It's an absolutely disgusting situation. And I think every fan of football should actually stand up and protest about it.
Well, Hannah, I'm a big fan of football, but I don't want to enjoy the World Cup at the expense of 3 million canine lives. Why do you think, Hannah, that the Moroccan authorities feel that for this event to unfold in the way that they want, they have to destroy all these poor dogs? Why?
It's awful, isn't it? I mean, it's a very different cultural narrative in countries that consider dogs to be haram. They're quite inconvenient. If you have to be ceremonially clean and dogs touch you, then you have to wash a lot. I think, to be honest with you, it's kind of a scapegoat for a situation that they've wanted to deal with for a while, which is to clean up the populations of dogs. But it's just being done in the most horrendous way. It's just totally unnecessary to have to dispatch dogs by shooting them in the streets and poisoning them in horrendous ways. So yeah, we really need to step up and speak up about it, as Jane Goodall and many others have. So yeah, we need to keep putting pressure on to see that stop immediately.
Well said. And Peter, as you said earlier, that FIFA, to its credit, said we don't want this. So why is it that Morocco is pressing ahead against the wishes of the organisers of the event?
Well, I think, as Hannah has just pointed out, there is an undertone to this that they found a good reason to actually clean up their streets. But what is also very sad is that in many communities, the stray dogs are actually looked after very well by the communities. And this is always a human problem, not an animal problem. This situation is created by carelessness from humans, not carelessness within the animal community. And they have to take responsibility for their stray dogs. It's disgusting, and it's against all the rules of compassion and commitment.
Couldn't agree with you more. Peter Egan and Hannah, thank you so much for your time. Hannah Malloy, expert on bully dogs, and Peter Egan, our friend, the animal rights activist and actor, of course, famous actor. You've seen him in Downton Abbey, ever-decreasing circles, but he works tirelessly to campaign against animal cruelty, and I'm right behind him. What do you think? What do you think about that? Well, first of all, the bully dog situation, which I think is just like ridiculous. Something's got to be done about that. Thousands of dogs kept in these compounds, in these kennels, paid for by the police, who are having to pay their veterinary bills, their kenneling bills, their food bills. I mean, good for the police, but why is it their job? And why do these poor dogs have to wait sort of years, essentially, for the decision to put them down? This is all wrong, isn't it? Your thoughts, 03444 991 1000. Now, after the news, the 9 o'clock news, I'm going to be joined by former Cabinet Minister Anne Widdecombe. We're talking about the BBC, the latest bid to bail out the BBC, because millions of people are no longer paying their TV licence, is to incorporate, like the Netflix, the streaming services, into the licence fee. So you'd have to pay for the BBC in order to get Netflix. What do you think about that? That next. Stick around.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
welcome back. In about 20 minutes or so, we're going to go back to the phones, going to take your calls. You know what we're talking about, the return of the death penalty. Rachel Reeves, Rachel from Accounts, her plans for growth, such as they are. Looks like a sort of railway line between Milton Keynes and Oxford, and a better road from Buckinghamshire to Cambridge. That apparently will add up to a new Silicon Valley for Britain, and also she wants a new runway at Heathrow. Well, all very well. I'm actually all for that. That is a kind of plan for growth. The trouble is it'll take about 10 years to even get there. So where is her growth? Every business boss in this country is saying you killed off all growth with your budget last year. 40 billion pound tax grab. There's no room for growth here. So your thoughts about Rachel from Accounts and her plans? West Streeting. He's on manoeuvres. He wants to get the top job. He wants to be the Prime Minister. But perhaps he should concentrate on the NHS, which MPs have described as being run by bureaucrats who run out of ideas, and new pictures reveal the horror of what's going on in A&Es all over the country. These corridors full of trolleys with patients on them, many of them old people, nurses and doctors telling horrific stories of how they're so overrun. They're so hard pressed that they don't notice people dying in these corridors. So you've got dead people lying in corridors next to living patients for hours on end. West Streeting said he was going to reform the NHS. Don't you think he ought to get on with it? 03444991000. Before we get to any of that, though, we're going to talk about the BBC. This Labour government is constantly trying to come out with plans to bail it out. More and more people, quite understandably in my view, are not paying the TV licence. There are many reasons you can get away with that while still watching telly. If you don't watch the BBC, if you don't watch live events, you can watch Netflix, you can watch Disney, all of those streaming channels. Doesn't cost you anything. You don't need a TV licence. Well, to plug that gap, if you like, the latest proposal from a government who really want to help the BBC, they love the BBC, is to sort of incorporate streaming services into the licence fee. So you pay £174.50 as of April. Now, the proposal is, unless you pay that, you won't be able to watch Netflix or Disney or Paramount or any of those other streaming services. Now, I don't know what you think about that, but I think a lot of people might be quite annoyed by that. Let's talk to, it's good to have her back on the show, it's been a while, to former Cabinet Minister, former Tory Cabinet Minister. She switched to Reform, but it's good to have her on the show. Anne Widdecombe, welcome, Anne.
Hello, love to be back.
Thank you. Now, your thoughts on this. Only recently, the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, in another proposal, which is to bail out the BBC. Labour love the BBC, of course, public service broadcasting and all that, as opposed to entertaining broadcasting. Her proposal was that we all have to pay for the BBC in our taxes, in our income tax. Even the BBC don't like that because that compromises their independence. The new proposal is that unless you pay your BBC TV licence fee, you won't be able to watch Netflix, you won't be able to watch Paramount and all the other streaming services. I don't know about you, Anne, but I find that rather authoritarian and unsatisfactory.
Well, it's certainly inequitable. I mean, I should say right away, I don't have any streaming services, so I've no personal interest in this. But I nevertheless feel that it's quite wrong. First of all, it's wrong continually to bail out the BBC. The BBC, if it is making the right sort of programmes and people are enjoying it, the BBC would be successful in its own right. Now, there are bits of it that, I think we should support. The World Service, for example, Radio 3. But in general, the main television services that the BBC produces is not something that justifies a tax, which is what this is. Well, now the proposal is that you pay that tax even if you don't watch it, which to my mind is insane.
Yeah, and deeply unfair. In terms of the BBC generally, Anne, how have you viewed the direction of travel, particularly in their journalism? I think it's a very strange spectacle to see this organisation which stares us in the face and says, we are studiously balanced, we are studiously unbiased, when we know the opposite is true. It's one of the least balanced journalistic outfits I've ever seen. And I think that the people who are drifting away from paying the TV licence fee, a lot of them are fed up with the BBC's left-wing, often very anti-Israel journalism. What do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I think that's a very fair assessment. It is not as impartial as it should be. The reporting throughout the COVID crisis was hysterical. It was inflated. They kept telling us that people were dying of COVID who weren't dying of COVID at all. And it was, I think, pretty indicative of its preference for sensation over understanding. It is not impartial in its analysis, and if something is dull and boring, it won't say it. It always wants to go for the drama. And that is not the BBC that I grew up with, which was extremely sensible. Interviewing was extremely fair. The idea wasn't that you've got a gotcha moment. The idea was that you got to the bottom of whatever it was that the politician of the day was proposing. And I believe that the BBC has declined phenomenally. And of course, climate change is a very good one. Everything, the BBC, according to the BBC, is due to climate change. The fact that there might be some other explanation, or we've had these phenomena throughout history, never mentioned.
No, exactly. Why have the powers that be at the BBC allowed it to drift in this direction? I totally agree with you, Anne. You know, I grew up in the glory days of Auntie Beeb. The BBC understood this country, it understood the audience, it served children brilliantly, it served young people brilliantly, it served older people brilliantly, it entertained the nation, it informed the nation in a fair and balanced way, and that's what the state broadcasters should be all about if we must pay for it. It's assumption, it's entitled view that we must carry on paying for it when it's lost all of those facets I just listed is extraordinary to me. I mean, why can't Tim Davie, the current Director General, and his acolytes see that they've dropped the golden goose here? They've stopped doing what they're there for.
Well, when Tim Davie came in, he made a very, very big issue of impartiality. But I don't think that the words have been matched by action. And yes, there are very good programmes on the BBC that cost a lot to make them. They wouldn't be able to make if it was purely commercial, but not many. Not many now. And I think that they have lost sight of that, as you rightly say. You asked me why. I just think a very steadily growing left-wing influence, not only in political terms, but in terms of the sort of entertainment that is put on. You know, all the comics are left-wing, for example.
Exactly, yeah, and the dramas are all about the horrors of Thatcher, the horrors of Toryism, etc.
And if anybody made a drama praising Thatcher, they wouldn't show it.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't. They definitely wouldn't. What do you think about? I mean, what we're talking about, generally speaking, here is value for money in terms of what the licence fee soon will be, which is £174.50 a year. Quite a lot, by the way. It's much cheaper to get Netflix. But in terms of value for money, are they delivering? I don't think they are they?
I don't believe they are. As I say, there are bits of the BBC, like the World Service, there are bits of the BBC which are worth supporting and which probably couldn't survive if they had to rely purely on advertising and commercial practices. So from that point of view, there are bits of it that are worth supporting. But if you're asking me, are they worth £174 a year? I must say I do wonder every year when I renew my licence why I'm doing it. And yet I seem to. And I think a lot of people now are questioning that, and they're saying, hang on, why are we doing this? Perhaps we don't need to be doing it. And the streamers have provided some sort of alternative.
Yeah.
So the idea now is to take away the alternative.
And I do believe that in this day and age, I mean, the BBC is clinging on to the licence fee for dear life. And sadly, you know, Labour governments will always support them in that, because Labour governments have this kind of idea about public service broadcasting. And of course, they see their kindred spirits in the BBC, left-wing government, left-wing broadcaster. But I do think we need a discussion, I don't know if you agree, about what I now see as the anachronism of the TV licence. It's locked in the past. And as you alluded to earlier, Anne, why can't the BBC just be like other broadcasters, to live on its products? If they were delivered entertaining television, you could say, if you want to pay for this service, you can. If you don't like Netflix, if you don't want to, you don't have to. But forcing us to pay this licence fee by law, I mean, that's got to end, hasn't it?
Well, of course, if you're forced to pay any fee by law, you might as well call it a tax and have done with it. And that is effectively what is happening. We're being taxed in order to pay for the BBC. And yes, I mean, I think it's time for a root and branch review. I'm not going to go rushing in and say, you know, kill off the licence fee tomorrow and do something else in its place. But I am going to say it's high time to ask if we should be doing that.
Yeah, I think we need a serious debate. Do you mind if I slightly move on, while I've got you, for your esteemed view on this government right now? What did you think today about Rachel Reeves's announcement for growth? I think it's extraordinary. We've got this government that keeps going growth, 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 growth. We are all about growth. Well, you just came up with this budget last October, a £43 billion tax grab, the biggest in history, a grotesque attack on the private sector. You killed off growth in October. Who do you think you're kidding?
Well, Reeves calls herself an economist, but she must have been missing on the very first lesson in economy that was ever delivered, because everybody knows if you put up costs for employers, one, they have to reduce the numbers they employ, or they have to pass on those costs to customers, who then reduce the amount they buy. And that is not a recipe for growth. That is a recipe for the exact opposite. And that, of course, is what is happening now. I think very slowly they're waking up to the fact that that's what they did. But didn't they stop to think in the first place, haven't they got anybody there who actually understands these things? We've got a government in which the Prime Minister doesn't understand politics and the Chancellor of the Exchequer doesn't understand money.
It's not a brilliant situation, is it? I mean, this government, they're socialists. I mean, they're fairly extreme left-wing socialists, if you ask me, and they labour under the delusion, in my view, that creativity, productivity, the prosperity of the nation comes from the public sector. Nothing could be further from the truth. Entrepreneurialism, creativity is in the private sector. And what are this lot doing to the private sector, our usually brilliant private sector? They are taxing it to the hilt, taking all their profits and giving it to the public sector. And that is a recipe for economic disaster, is it not?
Yes, and they're not even giving it to the public sector in terms of increasing services. They're giving it to public sector unions in terms of increasing pay, which is something entirely different. And the public sector, of course, doesn't make money. It's the private sector which makes money, and it's the making of the money which then funds all these other services. And they don't appear to understand that either. They are very, very left-wing. I mean, the first thing they did when they came in was to, at the expense of the old folks, I might point out, was to give huge pay rises to public sector unions and to some other unions. So they're not at all in tune with the way an economy works.
Absolutely. A last question to you, if I can. Again, going off piste. A poll out today which reveals that the majority of people in Britain would favour a return of the death penalty. Interestingly, the biggest majority was among younger people, millennials. Where do you stand on the death penalty, Anne?
I have always believed that there's a moral argument for having the death penalty, because in the 5 years following its abolition in 1965, for the next 5 years, We continue to collect statistics based on the division between capital murder, that's murder that would have attracted the death penalty, and murder that wouldn't have attracted the death penalty. And the capital murder rate went up, because in Hansard went up 130%. And there was also a big concomitant rise in the incidence of firearms being taken on robberies. Now, that, to my mind, is absolute proof that it's a deterrent. I'm not interested in it as a retribution, but I am interested, is it a deterrent? Would it save innocent lives? The answer is yes.
Thank you for an unequivocal answer. I tend to agree with you. Anne Widdecombe, excellent to have you back on the show again. Good to talk. Thank you very much for your time. That is the redoubtable Miss Widdecombe, former Tory cabinet minister, long-serving member of the political elite, and also she switched sides not so long ago to the Reform UK party, so good to have her back on the show. We're going to go to break now. When we come back, I'll read some of your messages. We're going to take phone calls for the rest of the show, so we got 40 minutes of you. It's good to talk. You have the floor. Let's do it after this break. Stay tuned.
Government borrowing costs hit a 27-year high, and the pound is taking a pounding. Gloomy economic data is expected to show inflation and growth are off course.
Let me ask again, and can you please be clear, will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor for the duration of this parliament?
Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job. She has my full confidence, and she has the full confidence of the entire party.
Can Rachel Reeves hold on as Chancellor?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I've got some WhatsApp voice notes as well, so we'll play those, or we'll pepper those through the next 40 minutes or so until we get to 10 o'clock. Don't forget, Petri Hoskin will be in to tell you what she's got lined up for your entertainment from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. That'll be in about half an hour or so. I've got a couple of messages first. This is from Sally. I love getting messages from Sally because she's in the Outer Hebrides. I've got to get up there some. I've never been to the Hebrides. I'm fascinated by the Hebrides, the Orkneys, and all those long away places, far away places. So Sally in the Outer Hebrides says, regarding HMS Agincourt, that's this the submarine that King Charles wanted to change the name of. Regarding the HMS Agincourt, any navy that would rename a vessel for fear of offending another country isn't much of a naval threat to anyone. Another example of why we are the current world joke. You're true. It's true, actually. You know, shouldn't we be valiant and brave about naming our ships, and to hell with everyone else? It's the Navy. Oh, we mustn't offend the French. Well, you know, the French wouldn't mind that much, and we like offending the French. Come on. It's a king. It's ridiculous. He's a woke guy, I'll tell you. And that nonsense. He loves Ed Miliband's nutty net zero insanity as well. So wind your neck in, Your Majesty, and just be a king. Stop getting involved in politics. And the next time we want to name a ship after a French battle that, of course, we won, because we always beat the French, we will. We will, and we should. By the way, they changed the name of the submarine to HMS Achilles. Maybe the king might have thought that could be offensive to Greek people. You know, I don't know. Where does all this nonsense stop? Here's one from Johnny. Johnny says, what taxes is Rubbish Reeves going to raise next? She said, we are not going to tax working people. She said that. How's that going, Rachel? Says Johnny. There is no more money left, let alone giving it to illegal aliens. Great show. Thanks, Johnny. Right, well, let's, before we go to the phones, let's do a quick WhatsApp voice note, shall we? This is Bernie on the Heathrow runway.
Kev, Bernie here. They have absolutely no intention at all of building a third runway. This is a complete smokescreen. They know it's going to get fired down, but it's going to look good. It'll distract everybody. It'll make us think, or it's meant to make us think, that they actually do want this to happen. There's no way the Green Agenda is going to let that through. It's not going to get voted through. It's a complete smokescreen.
I agree with you, Bernie. I absolutely agree. I mean, you know, a chance to say, oh, it's growth, look at the middle runway. Well, you know, if we could have that runway tomorrow, that might be a plan for growth. But, you know, on the off chance it gets through the blizzard of objections, mainly from crazy Ed Miliband, the Net Zero Secretary, who won't like it at all. He didn't turn up for a speech today, pointedly, I thought. But if it gets through all of those objections, it'll take 10 years, easily. So this isn't a plan for growth. And by 10 years, let me tell you, Rachel, you won't be in power. I can guarantee you that. You can rest assured on. I love it, this government, they spent a lot of time saying, when they first came in, oh, Keir, well, you know, 5 years are going to be very difficult, going to be very hard. You have to give us 10 years. And in the second term, things will start to really improve. Yeah, you ain't getting a second term, mate. Not in a month of Sundays. Not after the disaster of your, what is it now, 8 months of hell. Absolutely useless government, full of useless people pursuing this mad socialist agenda that is wrecking the country. It's just an extraordinary spectacle, don't you think? 03444991000. Let's talk about the extraordinary spectacle of this lousy Labour government. They're so bad. You know, people like me, we always thought they'd be bad, but not this bad. I mean, they're useless, aren't they? Useless. Couldn't organise a booze up in a brewery, he said, avoiding the swear word. Right, let's go to the calls. Let's go to Jay in Essex. Hello, Jay.
Oh, hi, Kevin. I like your rants. Carry on with them, mate.
I've got to stop, actually. I keep losing my head, but carry on, Jane.
I know. I want to talk about the misuse of public funds. All the councils are saying how hard up they are, and they're bankrupt or going bankrupt. They've got to put their council tax up. How can one council be spending £1,000 per asylum seeker on driving lessons? They have these silly pet projects that they spend our money on, and it's disgusting.
I did see that.
We should know exactly what they're spending the money on, and it should be the basic services first.
There was one council, I agree with you, we shouldn't be paying for asylum seekers driving lessons. There's one council that I'm going to exonerate here, it's called Cherwell Council, I think it's up near Oxford. And there was a big of a row, they're paying for migrants driving lessons, but it turned out that the driving lessons that they were paying for were for Afghan translators who worked with British troops during the war there. So I would support that, because these were people who helped our troops. But generally speaking, you know, you're right, Jay. Migrants, you know, they get, you know, free driving lessons, free accommodation. By the way, many of the places that we make for them to stay, they get, because they get built sometimes. There's a lot of places being built and converted. They get special TV services, translated into their language, so they get channels from their home country. We're paying for that. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
But it is misuse of public funds.
Yeah, I agree with you. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Whoever signs this off should be sacked. And until they do that, and to be honest, no one in the blob is unsackable either, Kevin. If you can't do the job, you lose your job.
Yeah, but, well, you're sort of parroting Donald Trump there, and if only we lived in a common sense world, in the common sense world that America has fast become under Donald Trump. I mean, in 2 weeks, he has returned the crazy United States to common sense, getting rid of DEI, sorting out the troops, sorting out everything over there, driving a freight train through wokery. Now, he is returning America to common sense. As you well know, Jay, sadly, here in Britain, under two-tier Keir, we are still trapped in a world of kind of socialist insanity.
But it's crackers. There are enough people in this country that have got a brain. The trouble is their ego is bigger than their brain. And that's always going to be a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, but you know, these people who are running the country or wrecking the country, the government, I mean, they're left-wingers. They're just they're ideologues. You know, they believe in taking money from the private sector and giving it to the public sector. They believe in crazy wokery. You know,
sabotage for the country, isn't it?
It is. They don't believe in borders. You know, they make noises about solving the migrant crisis. They don't want to. They don't want to. Looks like Keir Starmer's got plans to let, you know, 300,000-400,000 legal migrants in every year. So that's going to... fingers crossed, Jay. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, keep up good work, Kev.
Great call. Thank you very much. Keep calling, Jay. Jay in Essex there. Let's go to... we've just about got time. I'll tell you what, Paul in Hertfordshire, new caller, will come to you after this break. So stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's take a quick WhatsApp voice note. This is from Judy on airports.
Hello, it's Judy from Altos, West Yorkshire. Why has everything got to be for London? They don't need another runway. I think London's congested enough. There's an airport up north called Robin Hood that's been shut down. All they have to do is open it up and invest in that instead of another runway. Bring some money up north. You can fly planes just as well from Robin Hood as you can from Heathrow. Thank you.
Judy, yeah, I can sense from your accent you're not actually from London, and I absolutely agree with you. You make a very, very good point. Despite the best efforts of generations of politicians to decentralise this country, it still does seem to revolve around London. I'm a Londoner, that does me good, but people around the country, what about them? Yeah, good point, good point. Why does this extra runway have to be at Heathrow? Why not benefit another community with a new airport or something like that? So yes, Judy, good point, well made. I'll read a quick note out. This is from Paul. He's a dentist from Hertfordshire. He says, just goes to show how clueless they must be. He's talking about Tutia Keir and Rachel from Accounts and the General Cabinet of Labour generally. He says, it just goes to show how clueless they must be, invoking the spirit of Thatcher and Trump to fire the economy because they have no left-wingers to inspire us with. Good point again, well made, Paul, absolutely. Let's go back to the phones, and Paul's been waiting patiently. He's a new caller, so it's good to have him on board. Paul in Hertfordshire, welcome to the show. What would you like to say?
Hello, Kevin. That was actually my voice, my text message about Starmer and Reeves.
Oh, was it?
Read out.
Oh, was
yeah.
it? Okay.
I've got on twice.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Well, we're an embarrassment of riches. So, Paul. By the way, I thought it was a very good message that you sent. Well, tell us, what did you think about Rachel Reeves's speech for growth today?
I didn't have the sort of. I wasn't inspired enough to listen to it. I've heard it all before from her. It's just words, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's a lot of blowing out words that sort of are supposed to inspire the economy, but I just can't see it happening.
I mean, we know about the third runway at Heathrow that she says she now backs.
We need that runway for the extra, how many, 10 million more people that we need, or we're going to end up with over the next 10 years.
Yeah, how else are they going to get the migrants into the country?
Exactly.
Good point. But, I'm in favour of the runway because that is good for the economy in the end. More people coming into the country, more financial activity, etc., etc. But if they're like, I don't think it'll happen ever. But even if it does happen, it'll take 10 years. So it's just saying.
I was watching I can't remember what I was watching. It took about the same amount of money as it cost to run the NHS for a week or two. The same amount of money built the Burj Khalifa.
No, I mean the NHS, the costs involved are obscene. They're grotesque. Was it? They say Britain is a health service with a country attached to it. I think it takes something like we spend about a third of our money on the NHS. It's just ridiculous. Our national finances on the NHS is ridiculous.
But I work in the NHS myself, so I can tell you it isn't being run properly from top all the way down to the bottom. The inefficiencies are unbelievable. You could run it for half the money. It's just that because it's such a big, unwieldy behemoth, everyone needs to justify what they're getting paid for. A lot of these people don't need to be there.
Exactly right. I mean, I've been saying the 3,500 middle managers who earn more than £100,000 a year. I don't want to put people out of work, but I just know that probably 2,000 of them, 2,500, you don't even need? And why, I'd be interested in your take on this, Paul, why the hell does the NHS spend £40 million a year on 800 diversity officers? What's that about?
I don't know. I've been working in the NHS for 30 years now. You treat everyone the same way they come in, just people. There doesn't need to be all of these extra layers of just money being wasted. Just it's there to treat people. You don't need all these extra things created out of nowhere. We didn't need these things 20 years ago.
You used the word behemoth earlier, and the NHS has turned into a bureaucratic behemoth, just completely tied up in ludicrous red tape, administered to by far too many middle managers. It's a basket case, isn't it?
Did you see Trump's press secretary yesterday, Caroline Levitt?
Well, not yesterday. What did she say?
Well, all you need to do is watch her. She's very inspiring. I think she's 37 years old. She came out, she told all the press exactly what Trump's going to do on his behalf, obviously, as his press secretary.
Yeah. Don't you wish we had a Donald Trump?
You know what? I was inspired. That's the sort of people we need in our government. She told everyone exactly what was going to happen. She told all of the left-wing press exactly what was going wrong last time under Biden. She told it as it was. She said, we're pausing a lot of the public spending to find out exactly what's going on with it. That's what we need here. We need to know exactly what's going on. We need to pause it. She said, the only things we're not pausing is benefits and payments for American people, but all these foreign aid budgets are going up.
It's brilliant,
they were
isn't
paying,
it?
I think, 50 million. Biden was about to sign off £50 million for condoms in Gaza. That's what I was listening to earlier. You wouldn't believe it. There was lots of stuff that she came out with.
Was he really? He's going to spend $50 million? Unbelievable.
She needs to be our chancellor. I was inspired. I wanted to move to America.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do now. I used to live in LA, and a lot of my liberal friends over there, they say, we're leaving America, we're coming to Britain. And I say, I'll see you at the airport, I'm going the other way. By the way... the press secretary, got to pull you up there, Paul. She's 27, not 37.
Oh, well, there you go. Just goes to show, youngsters, if they're inspired, they can go to the top.
Absolutely.
And women.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he runs a very diverse ship. He's the enemy of diversity, but his government is diverse.
Apparently so. But, he's proving everyone wrong, isn't he?
He certainly is. Paul, listen, really good. I'm really glad you called. You're a new caller, but don't make it your last call. Call me again. Great to talk. Paul in Hertfordshire there, dentist, works for the NHS. You heard what he had to say. Let's go straight to Lowry in Merseyside. Hello, Larry. You want to talk about the BBC?
Hi, Kevin. Yes. I'm one of those poor pensioners who's just lost that allowance that we were promised.
Your winter heating, fuel allowance.
Yeah, the winter allowance has gone. So I've got a good idea.
Go on.
Why doesn't Rachel, the BITCH, why doesn't she give us all a TV licence?
That would compensate
a little bit.
We've got to be careful with that word you spelt out there, Larry. I kind of have to apologise for that.
Right. Well,
don't worry. It's just broadcasting rules. You were saying?
Yeah, I just don't see why we can't just have a TV licence if you're over 70 instead of the winter fuel allowance.
They took that away from you as well, did they, the free TV licence?
Well, yeah, we haven't got that anymore.
With this government, I mean, what were they? They're sort of. Why do they seem to be waging war on senior citizens, don't they?
Oh yeah, we'll be dead soon though, because the NHS is so poor that they won't be treating us after we're 65 or 70. Yeah. And I want to know that Streeting, what's his name? The
Wes Streeting, yes. Yeah.
What experience has he got of the NHS?
Oh, well, he's a politician. The politicians, they can do everything. He's got no experience with the NHS, no experience of health managers, isn't medically qualified. But then again, health secretaries very rarely are.
No, that's right. They should get some of us poor old souls who worked for the NHS from 1976 when I graduated to, retirement. And then ask our opinions.
Well, yeah, exactly right. Can I ask you something, Larry? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Did you vote Brexit?
No.
You voted to remain. Well, in that case, Keir Starmer might like you.
Well, I met Keir when I was a magistrate, and he was most keen to say nice things because he knew we worked for very little apart from expenses.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And how did you find the future Prime Minister when you met him?
He was very gentlemanly at the time.
Yeah. No, I think he's a polite enough guy. How are you?
Very tough.
But how are you rating his prime ministership so far? I'm not thinking it's too good. How do you think?
He's pretty useless. The only thing he does give all you talk presenters a good reason to be like comedians at times.
Yeah, well, he gives us plenty of material, but I would rather have a competent Prime Minister that we couldn't make jokes about. I mean, it's all very funny laughing at Starmer's uselessness and his stupid voice like that, similar voice to Rachel Reeves. I just wish they were better at their jobs. What's that again?
Nigel soon.
Nigel Farage. So would you now vote Reform UK, yeah?
Yes, I've joined the party.
Okay, good for you. Good for you. Larry, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Larry in Merseyside. Call me again. Shall we... Yeah, let's quickly do a WhatsApp voice note before we go to break. And this is George on the death penalty.
Good evening, Kev. George in Blackpool here. I tried to make a point earlier on Jez's show that I think the death penalty should be reinstated for cases like the Southport murderer, but the execution should be stayed for 2 years, and on the condition that within those 2 years, if 66% of the victims' immediate families petition for clemency, the execution could be stayed and commuted to a full life term without parole. Thus, the killer has to endure 2 years of prison justice, not knowing if it will continue or end at the 2-year point. And as for Sarah Sharif's father, there shouldn't be any opportunity for clemency. He should just be put to death as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's an interesting point by George. Yeah, I definitely agree that we should be very cautious about the death penalty. And probably if you asked me a year ago, 2 years ago, I'd have probably said that on balance, I was pretty doubtful about the death penalty. But I see what happened in Southport, and I think what purpose is really served by putting that little monster in jail for more than half a century, 52 years? He'll be 70 years old if he makes it to the end of his sentence. Well, wouldn't it be, frankly, more sensible just to put him out of our misery? Not necessarily with a hanging or a electric chair or anything theatrical like that. As I keep saying, you just use a humane injection, let him slip away. So I'm kind of going more and more towards that because, we can't let people get away with what he did. The state should stand up for itself and say, I'm sorry, you just crossed the line, and up with what you did. We will not, as a nation, put. Simple as that. We've still got time for some calls on that, so get on the phone, 0344 499 1000. We'll go to break now, back in just a second.
when we win the next general election...
When you say?
Not just... Yeah, well, look, if you look at where we're headed in the polls, Julia, we are... we've got an enormous amount to do, clearly. We have an enormous amount to do. But we can see the trend and direction in this country is the British people are waking up. They're waking up and appreciating the optimistic message that Nigel and our MPs are offering them. And that's why we've gone from 14% support in the general election just 7 months ago to polling average of the polls at 25%. So, yes, we have an enormous amount to do. We don't take anything for granted.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Petri will be in the studio in just a few minutes to let you know what she's got lined up for you from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. I'll just read a few messages, then we'll go back to the phones. I like this one. This is from Les in Cheshire. He says, I worked on the Robin Hood airport. Do you remember we had that WhatsApp about Robin Hood? Why don't they reopen it? I worked on the Robin Hood airport installing air conditioning units throughout. I earned in excess of £65,000 over a 3-month period, purely based on labour. I think he means you sort of worked round the clock, did many, many hours for that. So I earned in excess of £65,000 over a 3-month period based purely on labour. Then they shut it down. It just sums this country up. Jackie, I love Trump. I wish we had a Trump over here sorting out our dumping ground. Also, how dare they say there are only 2 genders? I identify as a carrot. There are only 2 genders, by the way. That's Lisa from Cheam being slightly tongue-in-cheek, facetious there. She's a carrot. So that's 3 genders, male, female and carrot. And here's one from Derek. I'll go back to the phones after this one. The Labour Party destroyers are the biggest threat to our way of life. The Labour Party hates the white working class. I agree with that. I really think they do. The Labour Party hates the white working class. The Labour Party hates pensioners. I think that's demonstrable. The Labour Party hates farmers. Well, we know about that, don't we? These Marxists intend to wreck everything. That's from Derek. Good points there, Derek. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Stephen in London. Wants to talk about the death penalty. What would you like to say, Stephen?
Hi, Kevin. Great show.
Thank you.
The death penalty is a 100% deterrent for all murderers because it prevents them from killing again.
It does preclude the possibility of reoffending, doesn't it?
Yeah, because people are always talking about the people who are found guilty, they're killed and later to be found out that they were innocent. Well, what about the people that, when murders are let out, those innocent people that are killed by them?
I never quite bought into that. I understand objections to the death penalty, and one of the things I agree with is I don't think it needs to be theatrical. I don't think we need gallows and ropes and nooses and electric chairs and all that sort of thing. I think there's one state in America where they still have the firing range. But anyway, I think that the argument that, we shouldn't have the death penalty in case we get it wrong, in case we make a mistake, I don't think that's a very powerful argument, do you?
I'd like to see the statistics for how many people were innocent, found out later they were innocent, were killed, and then the statistics for how many people are killed by murders who've been let out.
Good point. Good point. I mean, it's not unknown for those who've been executed to turn out to be innocent, but it's pretty rare. So rare that I don't think It's a particularly powerful argument, and you know, as I say, I saw what happened. I look at the pictures of those little girls in Southport. You know, I defy anyone to look at those little girls and to consider what that monster did to them and tell me he doesn't deserve the death penalty, because I think he does, doesn't he?
Well, there's a definitely strong argument for it. Talking about, can I just make a quick comment about killing of stray dogs in Morocco?
Yeah, go on, yeah.
Well, I go to Philippines a lot, and there's loads of stray dogs on the streets of Philippines. So when you first go there, they're quite scary. I once got trapped in a street. There's a pack of dogs at either end of the street. Every time I went towards one end, the pack would come into the middle of the street, start barking. I go to the other end, another pack would come in the street. I was stuck there. And then 2 Filipino guys came by, because I was stuck there. How am I going to get out? I'm going to be here till nightfall.
Yeah.
And 2 Filipino guys said, "Don't worry, just walk with us." And I walked with them, and as you get close to the dogs, they run away.
Yeah, so, which is better than killing them, isn't it?
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
If anyone makes the case that the stray dogs need to be killed because they might hurt a tourist, well, that's nonsense. I imagine the stray dogs in Morocco the same as the stray dogs in the Philippines.
Well said, Stephen. I couldn't agree with you more. No need to kill these poor stray dogs. It's not their fault. Stephen, really nice call. Call me again. Stephen in London there. And we got time now to go to Sandra in Essex. Hello, Sandra. What would you like to say?
All right. Hi, Kevin. Hi. I'm calling about Labour's apparent. Can you hear me? Yeah.
So
yeah. I'm just ringing about Labour's apparent reluctance
to call terrorists and to say the truth about Islam, or sometimes the unpleasant truth about Islamic extremists. Got to be careful, Sandra. You know, we're not actually talking about the vast majority of decent Muslim people, but there are extremists out there that we need to confront. We need to be realistic about. And I agree with you. Our government, these left-wing Labour people, somehow or other, they think being realistic, facing the truth about the threat of Islamic terrorism is somehow Islamophobic and racist. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Do they really think that ordinary, decent people who are Muslims would be okay with atrocities being carried out in
they wouldn't. Of course they wouldn't, because you know, they're the same. People are the same, Sandra. You know, most of us, we're just trying to get by, put a roof over our heads, feed our kids, maybe go on holiday once a year, and that includes Muslims. You know, they're no different to anybody else, but there are in our Muslim community, in our Islamic community in Britain, extremists who would do this nation harm, and it is worrying that we have a government that will not confront that is busy saying that guy, Axel Rudikabana, the Southport murderer, the monster, is not a terrorist, even though he was found with an Al-Qaeda manual and enough rice in poison to kill thousands. That strikes me as terrorism, doesn't it, you?
Well, exactly. And I mean, I think the thing is, I don't know, the CPS or the government, they didn't want to give us information. They didn't want to inflame the situation, but by not telling us facts,
they created a vacuum, didn't they?
They caused the thing that they wanted to avoid.
As I said, you know, they accused all the rioters and all these people on Facebook of spreading misinformation. Well, in effect, Keir Starmer, the government, the police, the local authorities, they kind of spread misinformation by sort of telling us lies, really. It was a cover-up, and they shouldn't have done that, and we should demand answers. Whether or not two-tier Keir will ever give us answers, straight answers about anything at all, is a pretty moot point, because he's a dodgy character. Sandra, thanks for an excellent call. Please call me again. Sandra in Essex. And next up, it's Petri Hoskin in the studio.
I am.
See what I did there? Seamless.
Brilliant.
Seamless.
I mean, that was genius.
That's why I get the small bucks.
That's why we share the small bucks. We have to divvy it out at the end of the day.
Yeah. 10p for you, 10p for me. Yeah. What's coming up?
Oh, If only that weren't true.
Yeah.
Right. What's coming up? Well, I'm going to be talking about the death penalty, as you've been talking about, and that people want it, and why did It's very easy when we're all angry and impassioned to say yes, that's what we should do, but is that really what people want? So I'm going to talk about that in the phone-in at midnight. So I really do need you to give me a call. Where would it apply? How would it apply? We've got people who were in prison for murder who've been let out because the new evidence has turned up and proved that they didn't do it, people in for rape. So we've got to be careful about it. And I'm going to be talking about knife crime because what's happening, particularly in London, is that the police are too scared to stop and search. Not because they're scared of the knives, but they're scared of the complaint.
Of the spectre of the accusation of racism.
Absolutely, that can see them being put on.
I know. Well, this is a sickness throughout our society.
Exactly right.
What sort of white middle class hand wringing